Welcome to the Digible Dudes podcast. I've got a couple of special guests here. Also, I am David if you don't recognize my voice, but next I'll pass it over to Adam. Who are you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm the director of paid media here at Digible.
And then we got Megan.
Megan, I'm the digital strategy lead for the paid media department.
Awesome. And these two...
Megan is podcasting all the way from Mexico, international podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I asked her what she had for breakfast, she said smoothie. I thought she was going to say street tacos. I don't know if that's like inappropriate for me to say, but I was like...
I've told Adam this. I was too excited about the tacos when I first... I mean, I've been in Mexico quite a bit for the last 3 months, but in January when I got here, I had, I think, at least 3 tacos a day, if not 6 tortillas, and it got out of hand pretty fast. So I'm starting to try to take advantage of the fresh fruits and vegetables more so than the tortillas.
Yeah, good move. Well, you two smarty pants have done some case studies, and you thought it'd be really good to get on and tell our audience about what you learned. So in this first of, I don't know, hopefully many short episodes, you guys wanted to go through some of your results. So the first result, I don't know if you guys have a fancier name for this, but your notes to me say neighborhood keywords. It doesn't exactly give me goosebumps, guys. So maybe if you could get into this case study and tell me why I should be excited.
Totally. I mean, yeah, there's nothing more excited than paid search keywords. But yeah, so what we wanted to really test out was how do neighborhood specific keywords or sub-market keywords compare to your broader search terms like city? So for example, would be apartments in Lodo versus apartments in Denver. What's their performance like? What's the demand like? And then how do they perform obviously on the back end as well?
Yeah. And I'll say this, this test kind of stimulated from, we did a matchback report for a few properties, and we were noticing the trend of a lot of unqualified leads coming from broader location terms. So like apartments Charlotte or apartments Denver just wasn't quite specific enough. So we wanted to kind of dive into an account that didn't have neighborhood keywords set up, set those up and see how they differentiated in performance compared to larger city keywords.
Awesome. So what did we determine? What are let's say I'm a marketing manager. What do I take out of this? What do I tell my vendor to do?
Go ahead,
Megan.
I was just going to say, you give us the specific market location details as possible. It really does make a big difference for performance. We saw for this one account specifically, we saw click-through rate increase by 11% compared to those broader location terms. CPL decreased by 75% and CPC decreased by 10%. So it was a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah, I think it's for those, the bigger the market, the more impact this will have. Like Denver and Charlotte, similar sized markets, but if you move into those the big cities like Chicago, obviously those sub-markets are so different from one another that the bigger your city, the more impactful these kind of sub-market keywords are, and the more important they are to strategy. And it's a really easy and efficient way just to drive quality leads and keep your cost per lead down.
And have you guys noticed, are you getting these mostly from clients, or do you guys do some neighborhood research? Like, for example, I always go on the Google Maps and then I scroll in and I look for the neighborhood name. I just got to imagine if I'm relocating to the market, that's probably how I'm going to search for my neighborhood, right? But locally, people call it something very different than what Google Maps does. I don't know where Google gets these neighborhoods, but it's not what locals tell you. So is there a difference in what you use?
Client data is always going to be the most insightful because they're the ones most close to that market. But if we get nothing, we'll always go and check in Google Maps. But like you said, it's even in Denver, right? If you were to zoom in, it would be lower downtown, but everyone in Denver calls it Lodo. And do the same thing if you're relocating. When I was relocating to Denver, I didn't know the difference between Lower Highlands, Lower Downtown, Wash Park. I don't know what the difference is in either of those. So I'm just like apartments for rent Denver. And then I just go in from there because I don't know anything about these submarkets. But for people who are, I'll say, very familiar with the market, like they know they want to live in Lodo, Low-High, Manhattan, wherever.
Yeah. Megan, let's ask, when you went to Mexico, did you look up that neighborhood?
No, to be honest, I'm still confused where I am half the time. So I came to Mexico because my brother lives here. He lives in Cholula, but there's a few different Cholulas. There's San Andres Cholula and then a different Cholula. So there's definitely submarkets here, but I'm still confused where I am.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I only in the last 9 months learned that Bailey has neighborhoods and what neighborhood I live in Bailey. So it's one of those things. I feel like when you know, and you're like, it's got to be there. But when you don't know, it's like someone may tell you, or you may look up the zip code, or you may use this neighborhood name. All that to say, I guess, from your guys' data, like some of those improvements on 10% cost per click improvement and some of those other metrics, that's significant enough. Because usually when you look at a search campaign, if you can get, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you can get 2 or 3% improvement of performance, it's like, let's do that. Because most of these tests are not 100% improvement. It is micro improvements. Right. So to see something that's a double-digit improvement, that's to me a pretty significant finding.
Yeah, it's super significant. Like you said, it's just a lot of small wins that'll pile up on top of each other. So yeah, these are definitely just an easier way. And it's typical, I'll say, of most stuff. Like the more specific a search, the higher qualified that user is. But it's also sometimes those more qualified leads or users can be also more expensive. But in this case, they're actually less expensive, which is a double win.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cool. Well, anything else we should know before we get out of here?
If you're in a big market, make sure you include submarket keywords.
Yeah, that's really what I was going to say. Take into consideration the market. Obviously, for bigger cities, this is going to make a bigger difference. But in general, the more specific you can get with your search campaigns and search targeting, the better performance you'll see.
Sorry, I have one more question. How do you guys feel about fibbing on the market? Let's say I'm kind of in the next neighborhood. Do I target neighboring neighborhoods?
That's a great question.
I'm testing that currently for some properties they're in Minnetonka, but we're saying St. Louis Park just because that's a little bit nicer of a region. So I'm told, at least, but they're so close. It's just down the street from being listed in St. Louis Park, which has actually helped gain a lot of traction. So I would say do it carefully. But there is possibility there.
Yeah, I would say as long as you're in line with, I'll say the target demographic. If I'll use Chicago, for example, but Wrigleyville is a way different demographic than Old Town. So if you're on the cusp, as long as you're little, your street, your block is in line with that demographic of the keyword you're putting in there, then I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Obviously, we've all been doing a lot of work around fair housing too. So as long as you're conscious about fair housing, it's not you know what, I'm in the whatever, a very low expense, low cost of town, and then I'm targeting Beverly Hills only, and that's it. Then that can get you in some trouble. So really interesting. But I love this test making because I'd love to learn, should I target every neighborhood around me to expand that, right? Or should I just say, nope, just my neighborhood are the only keywords I would use? And then I'm sure you're doing this, but how do you position the copy? Because you don't want to misrepresent and say that I am in that neighborhood. Right. It's just I may show up, and now I'm minutes away from whatever neighborhood.
Right.
Totally.
I mean, it's kind of the inverse of this test. If you're working with a smaller market or a less desirable market, it's how do you flip that and still gain the right interest, versus this test is trying to narrow down the interest so we hit the right people. But both present their own challenges.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for the info. And sounds like the first in a series, episode 1 of at least 2. See you guys.